All right, Mr. Ahmed here working on 10.5 today. The central question is angle relationships in circles. So we're going to look at three different types of angles in this, and that is when we have angles inside the circle, angles outside the circle, and angles on the circle. Each one carries a specific formula along with it. So the first one is the intersection inside of a circle, and that is when we have two chords that intersect inside the circle, and we have angles that are formed. There is a relationship between the angle that's formed and its intercepted arc. So in this case, we're going to take a look at angle 1. The measure of angle 1 is equal to 1/2 of its intercepted arc, and its intercepted arc, angle 1, is PR. So the measure of arc PR plus the measure of its vertical angles intercepted arc. Now, its vertical angles over here, these two angles are congruent, they're vertical, and its intercepted arc is QS. So, that is the formula that we will use for these problems with the angle inside the circle. Okay? So, hopping into our first example. Angle 1 is what we're supposed to find. So angle 1 is inside the circle. So we'll set up the equation. The measure of angle 1 is equal to 1/2 of its intercepted arc. Angle 1's intercepted arc is 52 plus its vertical angles. Intercepted arc is 40. Now when you calculate this, make sure you use the order of operations. Have to do 52 plus 40 first, then times it by 0.5, and the measure of angle 1 is equal to 46 degrees. So be careful when you type that in. So next example, number 2. This time we're looking for the arc GH. So the measure of arc GH, I'm going to put an X there from G to H because that's what I'm looking for. Now when you set up the equation always starts with the angle. The angle inside is 45, so 45 is the angle. So 45 equals 1/2 of its intercepted arc, which is X, plus vertical angles intercepted arc, 28. Now when I solve this one, I don't really want to distribute my 1/2 to the X. So for me to get rid of the 1/2, since it's being multiplied by the entire side, I'm going to times both sides by 2. That will cancel the 1/2. 2 times 45 is 90. Equals X plus 28. Subtract our 28, and X is equal to 62. So GH, the measure of arc GH, is equal to 62 degrees. We found it. All right, another example. Number 5, a little bit trickier this time. Now these two arcs, they aren't related to angle 5. Angle 5 is not going to be related with 130. That's not its intercepted arc, and neither is 90. So we need to find this angle next to it. I'm going to put that X. We know that those two are linear pairs, so if I can find X, I can find angle 5. So when I set up my equation, start with the angle again. Angle inside is X equals 1/2 its intercepted arc, which is 90, plus vertical angles intercepted arc, 130. Now when I solve, again, make sure you use the order of operations. Add these two together first, then multiply by 1/2. X is equal to 110. So that tells me that X, this angle, is 110. So for me to find angle 5, the two have to add up to 180. So the measure of angle 5 is equal to 180 minus 110, which is 70 degrees. Got it. Okay, last one. A little bit tougher on this one because we have more variables. Again, angle inside is 151. Have to use the sum. Angle inside, use the sum. You'll see that when the angle's outside, it's going to be different. So 151 equals 1/2 intercepted arc, 5x plus 13, plus its vertical angles intercepted arc, which is 2x minus 12. Technically, I should really put those inside parentheses when I add them. They're two separate parts. It gets a little trickier when we have to subtract. So, combine like terms. 5x plus 2x is 7x, so I have 1/2 times 7x plus 1 equals 151. Again, This time I really don't think I want to multiply by a half. I'd end up with decimals. So I'm going to multiply both sides by 2 times by 2. Cancels out. And we get 302 is equal to 7x plus 1. And when we finish solving, x is equal to 43. We got it. Found x. I know that at the very first part, maybe it wasn't real clear how I set this one up, so I just put this in parentheses because each arc was separate. Hopefully we were able to see that. I didn't have my paper underneath the camera real well. So, moving on. Next page. Intersection outside of a circle. Now, when the angle is outside the circle, so in this case we're looking at angle P. It's outside the circle and we have 2 secants, all right? The way that we're gonna do this is the angle outside is equal to 1/2 of the big arc minus the small arc. Now, when we think of this big arc minus the small arc, we are looking at the intercepted big arc minus the intercepted small arc, okay? Big intercepted minus small intercepted. So when I set up this equation, I'm taking a look at angle P. The big intercepted arc is BE. So we have to take 1/2 the measure of the big intercepted arc, which is BE, minus the small intercepted arc, AD. And that is the way that each one of these formulas work with the angle outside. The angle outside is always equal to 1/2 the big intercepted arc minus the small intercepted arc, okay? So all 3 of these formulas here on this page, they all work the same way. So I'm going to set up the next one. This one involves 2 tangents. So the measure of the angle outside, R, is equal to 1/2 the measure of the big intercepted arc, which is M to T to N, minus the small intercepted arc, which is MN. Okay, so that's the formula with 2 tangents. And now we have a tangent and a secant. Same process. Measure of the angle, this time it's Q, equals 1/2. The big intercepted arc is GKJ minus the small one, GH. So that's how we set up the equation for the angles outside the circle. So when you work through these problems, is the angle inside or is it outside? Angle's outside. The angle's angle 1. So the measure of the angle, always start with the angle. The measure of angle 1 equals 1/2. Big intercepted arc is 80 minus the small intercepted arc, 40. Now we just solve. Make sure you follow the order of operations again. 80 minus 40 is 40, times 1/2 is 20. So the measure of angle 1 is 20 degrees. Okay, next example. Angle outside again. Start with the angle. This time it tells us the angle, it's 20. We are looking for JP, which is an arc, so I'm going to put an X by it. So, measure of the angle is 20 equals 1/2. Big intercepted arc is 70 minus the small one, X. Okay, 70 minus X. Now from here, again, I don't want to distribute that because I'm going to end up with a fraction. So I'm going to times both sides by 2. Those cancel. 40 equals 70 minus X. Now when I subtract, I get negative 30 equals negative X. Don't forget to divide by -1. X is equal to positive 30. So the measure of arc JP is equal to 30 degrees. And we always put that little hat above the arc. Okay? And moving onward. We are going to skip number 4. So I'm going to cross that one off. That one involves a different theorem that we're not going to do. So, again, Tangent, secant, angles outside. Start with the angle. The measure of the angle equals 1/2. Big arc, intercepted, 160, minus the small one, 80. And again, follow the order of operations there, and the measure of angle 2 is 40 degrees. Okay? Like we said, we're skipping number 4. And we will move on to number 5. Okay? Number 5. This one's a little bit tougher because it doesn't tell us what the big intercepted arc is. However, I know the small one's 125. The whole circle is 360. So for me to find the big intercepted arc, I have to take 360 minus 125, which is 235 degrees. Now I can set up my equation. Angle outside, 6x minus 11 equals 1/2. Big intercepted arc, 235 minus small one, 125. Now this time I'm not going to multiply by 2 because I can just use my arithmetic here and I'm going to end up with a whole number. 235 minus 125 is 110. So I'm looking for 1/2 of 110 equals 6x minus 11. And then we get 6x minus 11 equals 55. Add the 11, 6x equals 66, x is equal to 11. Now the question, did it say to find x? No, it said to find the measure of AC. AC is not even there. We're going to change that. We just found x, calling it a day. Okay? All right. Kind of a long video today. That's kind of why we're breaking up this chapter. We know this one's getting a bit longer, but patience here. And we have one more rule after this, and then we will wrap things up. So, again, angle is outside. Start with the angle. 95 equals 1/2. When it's outside, we use a difference. Big arc, 55x, minus small arc, 17x. Now, those two can get combined. And when I combine those two like terms, I end up with 1/2 times 38x equals 95. I can take 1/2 times 38, that's 19, so 19x equals 95, and x is equal to 5. All right, last rule involves when the angle is on the circle, okay? When the angle's on the circle, the angle is equal to 1/2 of its intercepted arc. So in this case, we're looking at angle XTV, which is right here. I'm going to highlight that, make it bold. So XTV, that's equal to 1/2 of its intercepted arc, VUT. In a similar manner, this little angle on the circle, that's equal to 1/2 of its intercepted arc. Now, when I think about this, the whole circle is 360, the whole line's 180. Kind of makes sense that it's 1/2. So, when you see the angle on the circle, first step, we're going to find x. So, angle x is BAM, I guess we'll call that, even though it's not a point, but this angle here is x. Its intercepted arc is 156. So, x is equal to 1/2 of 156. When I take 1/2 of 156, I get 78. We found x. Now to find y, we have a linear pair. So we have to take 180 minus 78. So y is equal to 180 minus 78, which is 102. Okay? Next one, angle 2. Well, the arc that we know doesn't involve angle 2, so we need to find the other arc. For us to find the other arc, take 360 minus 134, because the entire circle is 360. This part's 134. That is 226 degrees. Measure angle 2 equals 1/2 of its intercepted arc, which is 226. 113 for angle 2. Now, when you're working on these, kind of keep in mind the angle definitely looks smaller than the arc. The arc is bigger than the angle. All right, last one. It says to find arc LM. So I'm looking for this arc. Well, it doesn't give me that. It gives me angles. These two angles have to add up to 180 because they're a linear pair. So we'll say 3x minus 1 plus 11x minus 1 equals 180. When I solve, combine like terms, 14x minus 2 equals 180. 14x equals 182, and x is 13. So we found x. Now for me to find the arc, I'm going to have to put x back in so I can find the angle. Okay, when I put it back in, the measure of the angle is 3 times 13 minus 1, and that's 38 degrees. So this angle's 38 degrees. For me to find the arc, take 38 times 2, because it's twice the amount. So the measure of arc, LM, is equal to 38 times 2, and 38 times 2 is 76. And I know this video got a little bit long. Take your time. If you need to do it in 2 steps, that's fine. But that is it for 10.5. Have a good rest of the day.